Now, the other approach or the model of internet governance is multilateral approach or multilateral model. Now, this is a model many of the state follows, and they think that this is the best model, and that is basically a national state participation. Here the state feels that they are the right parties to define the internet governance and have an absolute control over the internet, and the discussion with regard to the new or important issues, then it has a narrow constituencies. So, the state decides who will be participating in discussion and who are the major parties. Then from this particular concept, it is not difficult to understand that the state plays an important greater role in overall development of this model, and it has a bottom up approach, decision making approach, because it is a state participate and it is not a multi-stake model. So, transparency is not up to that extent as in the case of previous model. It depends on the state up to what extent they can define the issue of transparency, and on what particular issues they do not want to disclose. Then you will find a particular example of Russia, China, Iran with regard to it, and you will find that they have a very strong censorship laws with regard to it. Then the process of accepting new technologies is very slow and bureaucratic, and it takes time. Then it has very limited role of the civil society, because state is only taking important decision. Then it has a non-binding outcome. Then comes the multi-tier approach, and it is based on 5 important parts. The first part is infrastructure tier, then second is the critical internet resource tier, then the service tier, and then content and application tier, and the end user layer. Now, in infrastructure tier, licensing part is taken care of, because it is the state who decides, who actually frame the infrastructure. So, state is very much important party in defining and structuring the overall infrastructure. So, they are the decision maker as to which particular geographical area of the state they want to include, they want to connect with internet, and with whom not. Then critical internet resources, about IP address, developing new IP address, that is again state also takes control of it. State provides the link, and by that new IP address can be created. Then service tier and content tier, and you will find that subsequently the state is playing very major role in developing all different kind of things. Then there are, apart from that, now that was the model part, that there were 3 different important models, and out of these 3 important models, it was the multi-stake approach which was well accepted internationally and widely used and widely accepted. Now, from institution perspective as to who are the institution who are involved, then there are various institutions right from the beginning of internet who are involved in developing the internet, and to some extent they are also involved in internet governance. Now, to understand it, and the party who or the institution who are involved in that, we need to understand that internet is highly collaborative activities of the following technological collaboration. The first one is the development of internet protocols, IPA standards, then administration, coordination and collaboration of IP addresses, then domain names, then coordination of root server system, and lastly the coordination of procedures related to technical coordination of internet. So, internet is combination of all these 5 points, and now these 5 points, on these 5 points there are 6 different agencies internationally who are playing very active role from day one, and in some way they have developed their policy standards, quality standards in developing the issues with regard to it. Like the first one is Internet Engineering Task Force, then Internet Engineering Steering Groups, then Internet Architecture Board, then Internet Assigned Number Authority, then Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, and the last one, Worldwide Wave Consortium. Then of course, all these institutions to a great extent were private in nature, and so though they were private in nature, but to some extent US had control over these private institutions. So we can say indirectly US was prominently to some extent governing or taking care of internet governance to some extent. In 2013, a major event happened which again highlighted the issue of internet governance, and it wake up the whole world to have a very effective internet governance in a new way. And that was in 2013 after Snowdown, a revelation about US role in surveillance of data. NetMundial statement was issued, which recognize the following principle, and these principles are the discussion with regard to this principle or internet governance was supposed to be created on the background of this important issues. The first one is human right and shared value, then freedom of expression, freedom of association, privacy, accessibility, freedom of information and access of information, then development, then protection of intermediaries, unified and unfragmented space, etc. So these principles were developed, and it was thought that in the coming internet governance issues they will be very much highlighted, and they will be the important issue of discussion, and they will be incorporated in the overall concept of internet governance. Now the same NetMundial statement also recognize that multi-stakeholder is the best approach of internet governance, because it has transparency, it has accountability, and it talks about inclusive and equitable growth and so on. Now after that or before that also we can say there are various UN bodies also which are very involved in discussing or talking about the concept of internet governance. So there are three important bodies we can say. The first one is International Telecommunication Union, and it is actually involved in broadband internet, wireless technology, satellite based technology, internet access, TV, broadband. So they are very much dealing or having policy with regard to this, and it's a part of UN. Then in 2005 World Summit on Information Society was formed, and it has two important phases. The first phase was in Geneva. The important task of this summit or this phase was to develop the important concept of internet governance, and it formed a working group of internet governance. The second phase was in Tunis, and here the Internet Governance Forum was created. So two important bodies of UN was created out of this summit. Now the working group on internet governance developed the concept of internet governance, as I highlighted already the definition in the initial phase, introduction of internet governance. That definition is actually given by a working group of internet governance, and they defined it. They defined the multi-stakeholder as the right approach to discuss the internet governance as an overall concept. Then Internet Governance Forum started working from 2006, and from 2006 to 2015 these are the different issues on which internet governance had discussion, and they tried to form some kind of discussion from all stakeholders with regard to all these issues. Of course, Internet governance forums decisions are not binding, or the discussions are not binding, but at least there is a international format where the discussions are happening with regard to the proper procedure or proper method or the new issues of Internet governance. Then from Indian perspective, we can say that India from day one is participating in Internet governance, because India is heavily benefited by this technology, and at this point of time, if we have to somehow socially economically develop, then I think Internet is one of the best mode to provide that opportunity. And therefore, India from day one is participating in Internet governance forum and pointing out its own issues with regard to it. However, India has its own system of developing Internet governance. Here the state is plays important role. On majority of issues, it is the state who takes the final call. Of course, on some issues, the state along with the civil society participate, and they take the important decisions with regard to some issues. In that way, the overall Internet governance is done. Now, the module, the outcome of this module is to understand that by this time, what is Internet governance, what are the institutions, what are the different models of Internet governance, and how India follow the Internet governance. I hope by this lecture, to a greater extent, all this the discussion or these doubts must have been covered, must have been cleared. For further reading, you should refer to the reference which has been given in the study material. Thank you.